We've got LV Raju, who's MD of Kernix Microsystems, on the show with us. Sudhir Rao, Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer at Bartronics India. He joins us from Hyderabad. We've got Shailendra Choksi, Whole-Ton Director at JK Lakshmi Cement, who joins us from our Delhi studio. Rajiv Mundra, Director at Simplex Infrastructure. And also Ajay Mittal, Chairman and Managing Director at Arshia International. He joins us on the show from Mumbai. I'm going to begin with you, Mr. Choksi. I'm going to ask you to rate the budget on a scale of 1 to 10.
Well, I would say that it's pretty high, say about 6 or 7 as far as the intentions are there. The aspirations are high. But I agree that I don't really find anything. It's a very, very marginal improvement in the numbers as far as if you compare to the previous year. In fact, if at all, I find that the operating ratio has gone down. Last year they had busted for 91.1%, and what I could make out from his speech, he's already talking about 95%. How he's going to go to 84.9 and 74% in the next 5 years, it's a mystery to me. And until they approve that, then the figures for the internal resources would remain a big question mark. So I think the whole thing rests on his ability to garner funds. He is, I think, banking very heavily on the gross budgetary support, which of course he has increased only marginally from 57,000 crore to 60,000 crores this year. So again, that leaves you a question mark as to where does he get the fund for the two big, very well-intentioned projects that he has talked about in terms of the modernization and the safety. These are some of the question marks. Probably I'll find more details when I go through the final print. But right now I'm in a daze on these two issues.
Okay, Mr. Choksi, giving a lenient 6 on 10 to the overall railway budget. Mr. Raju, I'm going to bring it to you. Given that the focus of this time's budget was largely on safety, modernization, as well as capacity enhancement, do you think that that was really on expected lines, and what would be your own assessment?
In fact, as far the railway safety is concerned, it's a must. And they can't do that. But Railway Minister has rightly given a wonderful perspective for the next 10 years what's going to come out. But the biggest problem is how to generate the funds. The funds generation is going to be a big problem for Indian Railways unless they come out with some innovative ideas how to generate funds here. That's number one. Coming from the safety point of view, they said the Kutkar's committee, Sam Petro's committee members, they give a lot of recommendations. But it's a time-consuming process. It may take about anything between 10 to 15 years of time by the time these things get implemented and Indian Railways get modernized. In the intervening period, from now on, next 10 years, what is the way we're going to provide safety for Indian Railways? It has not talked about it. Because we have to come and discuss this issue from now onwards, next 10 years, what is the solution for the Indian Railways to prevent collisions, accidents and modernization. These are long-term plans. He talked about many long-term plans, and it's a time-consuming process. Tremendous gestation period is required for this. Therefore, railways have to plan for the intermediate period how best they can improve the functioning of the railways, provide safety and certain amenities to the passengers. This is what I feel. So the intermediate period, intervening period, what has to be planned has not been given in the minister's speech.
Right. Now, Mr. Sudhir Rao, if I could bring it to you, you deal with the railways on a regular basis. Now, going by what ministers in the past have said and what they've said in their budget speeches and what has actually translated to reality on ground, would you say there has been a severe disconnect?
Yes, I think there has been a fairly large disconnect in terms of what happens during the budget speech and what is the actual level of implementation at the ground. In fact, if we go back to today's speech, the Honorable Minister also acknowledged this fact when he said that one of the focus areas for him during the current year is consolidation. By consolidation, what he meant is that many of the programs that were launched in the last couple of years, he would like to take them forward and try and close some of those projects as far as the development efforts are concerned. Now, if we even look at one of the examples that he mentioned, that is that of real-time information system. This was announced in Madam Banerjee's budget speech last year. Tender for this was floated sometime in October-November 2011, and the pilot project is under implementation with some of the trains, especially the Rajdhani, etc., already running on a real-time information system basis. But the pace of expanding this very critical application across the entire Indian Railways is, I think we are still far away from reality. And that is the real beauty of using technology in an infrastructure as critical as Indian Railways for our country. So yes, I fully agree with you. I think there is a lot to be desired at the ground level vis-a-vis whatever is claimed during the budget speech.
Mr. Rahul, I thought, Ajay Mittal, we'll come to you in just a bit from now, but wanted to bring your attention, Mr. Rajiv Mundra, with respect to modernization. That was the main thrust this time around in the budget, and you had a slew of measures which have been laid out. Do you believe that this time around they are satisfactory, and with respect to their implementation, that they can actually come through?
You know, I think the intent of the minister is very clear. I think he has laid down a plan for the plan period and for the year. I think the intent is there to do substantial amount of modernization and doubling of tracks. I think he has outlined about 100 stations which he wants to do on PPP format. I think the biggest issue which we are going to see is if the central allocation does not happen for railways, how this is going to get funded. Because he has not spelled out anything other than the modernization of railway stations in PPP format. So I think the biggest issue is going to be funding. Otherwise, I think for infrastructure companies, it should largely benefit because he has outlined a substantial amount of capex which he wants to do for modernization of the railway network.
All right, Ajay Mittal, just coming to you. You know, every year when we speak to people in your industry, you know, and to just take the example of wagons and the amount of money that the railway commits to spend on these areas, when you approach the end of the financial year, a number of people come out and say that, you know, they said they'll spend so much, they've spent only so much. So how much importance should one actually lay or attribute to these numbers when the railway minister says, I'm going to spend so much on signalling systems, so much on wagons, so much on other safety issues? Somewhere do you buy these numbers?
I don't buy these numbers at all. If you really look at the dedicated freight corridors, he has to acquire land of about 1 lakh kilometers or something, of 1 lakh acres or something, out of which they've got about 6,000 acres of land. We were supposed to finish these dedicated freight corridors long time back. Now I don't know when is the finishing date, and I really don't buy these numbers of what they're going to do with modernization. The problem that has not been addressed thus far is increase in freight, the passenger freight fare. That has not been increased. So hence, how are they going to take care of meeting all these expenses that they're talking of in terms of the capital expenditure that they have? If we don't have all this capital expenditure in place in the next few years, how is Indian economy going to grow? In 1951, Indian Railways carried almost 90% of the cargo. Today they carry less than 30% of the cargo. If Indian economy has to grow at even 6% per annum in the next 10 years, we are going to see doubling of movement of cargo within the country. How is Indian Railways ever going to cope up to even keep its market share of 30%? And if they don't cope up, which is the lifeline of transportation within the country, who is going to cope up? Do you think roadways can, with land acquisitions being such a big issue? How are we going to do anything in this country? How is industrial growth going to go to more than 6%, or even economic growth going to go to more than 6%? It is something that I don't believe at all. They need to be more accountable. All these things that were being announced last year also by Mamata Banerjee about the 2020 plan, what has been achieved out of that? We have no idea, no clue about the same. I think it's a total eyewash.
Okay, interesting perspective brought up, Ajay. We'll come back to you on some of those points that you brought up. But wanted to bring in Mr. J.P. Chaudhary, Chairman and Managing Director at Titagarh Wagons, who also joins into the discussion. Mr. Chaudhary, thanks very much for joining in. With respect to what has been doled out in the railway budget this time around, I think the bone of contention does remain ability to garner funds. Would you believe that that remains one of the key problems? And what's your overall assessment as to what the railway budget came about this time?
Well, I must say I must compliment the young and dynamic railway minister on his vision to take the Indian railway forward on a growth trajectory while ensuring proper safety, increased comfort to passengers, faster movement of freight, reduction in the operating cost and operating ratio. Having said that, the main concern is that all the projects or all the outlays that have been announced will probably be very, very difficult to maintain unless they find the funding for it. Now, wherever the funding has also been found, the decision-making process has been a little slow. So I think a lot of emphasis has to be given to the private-public partnership concept, not just in making of additional wagon factories and additional coach factories, but also in so many other projects of the railways where the private sector can be very profitably involved. Now, as you know, in the past, certain initiatives were taken by the railways in the field of PPP. People invested a lot of money in different types of special purpose wagons. But then there are certain regulatory issues which have not or which have prevented these people from making these projects or turning them into viable projects. Now that decision making again has to be made by the railways, and there is a clash of interest between the railways and the private operators. So I think the railway minister has done a wonderful job in announcing a regulatory body for safety. I think the time has come where to also encourage PPP in a much bigger way. There should be some provision for a regulator to decide on matters which are outstanding between the railways and the private sector partners.
And Ajay Mittal, if I could just bring it back to you, you spoke of the fact that the railway ministry has been, the railways have been gradually losing share in terms of freight movement across the country. Now, the railway minister has spoken about expected freight traffic on its network at about 1,025 million tons in the next financial year, which is an increase of 55 million tons. He's spoken in absolute terms, but in percentile terms, it's just about 5% higher than the current financial year. Is this somewhere indicative of the fact that the railways is set to continue losing share to other modes of transport? Ajay Mittal.
Yeah, there is no other choice that the railways has but to lose shares to other modes of transport. But this is going to be at a cost of economic growth in the country. This is all because all that has been promised all over the years. You need to look at what's happened post-independence. We've added about 10,000 kilometers of rail line as compared to China that has done 30,000 over the last 5 years or 6 years. And if this trend continues, economic growth again, as I said earlier, is going to be at stake. And if they're going to only increase by 5%, you can imagine what happened 10 years from now if we grow at 6% per annum. They need to, just to maintain their market share, grow at a pace which the economic grows at, which is much larger than a 5% growth that they are talking of. And really putting the ball in the court of certain products being banned from being exported, like iron ore or whatever, is really not the issue. The issue lies with the fact that they have to have more seriousness with regards to building that infrastructure that is desperately needed, increase the efficiency. He's talked about today about the stations getting upgraded, but what about the goods sheds getting upgraded? What about the transportation of, or the loading and unloading of goods, which takes days and days when you move goods by train as compared to roadways, which is an end-to-end solution. He's talked about end-to-end solution, but what is he going to do about the end-to-end solution? So it is going to get worse. He has not achieved the targets of last year. I don't think he's going to achieve the targets that he set for this year either. Anyways, they're not aggressive enough and they're not going to be achievable.
Right, now, Rajiv Mundra, just bringing it to you, if you remember 3 years back when Mamta Banerjee presented the railway budget in July 2009, she spoke of the railways trying to monetize real estate at stations, trying to build stores, trying to basically capitalize on the real estate that existed over there and the traffic that moved in over there. We did see the stock prices of, companies like Pantaloon and such other retail stores spike up on the basis of that news. 3 years have passed, nothing has been done. Again, based on today's statement, do you believe we are actually going to see meaningful progress on at least some of the issues that the railway minister has spoken of?
On the PPP, I think he has just outlined for these 100 stations. I think this has been spoken of quite some time ago, I think 3 years ago or maybe a year before that. But I think it has remained a non-starter. And till the government comes out with a clear tender and clear policy on this, I don't know how many people are going to be keen to work on this. But I presume, I think the railway minister has done his job. He must have made his master plan and the set of conditions ready. So I think once it comes out, I think that will be the best time to speak about it. But definitely he could have done much more on the PPP format in terms of the railway lines and the networks. Definitely he will not be able to start the modernization what he has spoken of with the inadequate finances which he has.
Mr. Rao, a large thrust and focus of this budget also would have been to put the finances in order, and you did have the railway minister who spoke about the operating ratio. Now remember, it has remained very high. The cash reserves has also been declining, but he clearly said that he hopes to scale it down to 84% and then to 74%. Do you think that this is a tad optimistic or achievable?
I think it is a bit too optimistic. I think some of the other participants in this discussion also spoke about it. And the reason why I believe it is far too optimistic is because the time frame that he has set up, that is 1 year for achieving 84% from today's number and another 1 year to achieve 74%, I think it is too less. If we look at the progress of various initiatives that have been announced by the ministry and also the progress that has been made in the last 1 year, I think there leaves too much to be desired. And the point that the other speakers are also making, I think it is the pace which is actually of concern to us. And given the time frame as far as achieving this objective is concerned, I think it is too optimistic.
Mr. Chaudhary, wanted to get your closing comments on what you made of the entire budget, and are there perhaps any measures that you wish had been addressed that were not?
Overall, I would say that the budget is very forward-looking, very ambitious and aggressive budget. The only issue, and that's a big issue, is whether the minister, in spite of all his good intentions and good initiatives, will find the money necessary to carry his ideas forward. This is the big question, and one of the answers, as I told, is to have more involvement of the private sector in the railway projects. That is something which can ameliorate the situation to some extent, and that is the only issue which might come in the way. I think, barring that, I would commend the budget as a very good attempt towards technology upgradation, towards ensuring safety on the railway system, towards taking a bold initiative in taking the railway forward.
All right, Mr. Chaudhary, thanks very much for coming in on the show and giving us your take on the railway budget for 2012-2013. Mr. Rao, if I could bring it back to you for one final word. We know that freight rates have been raised at least twice in the last 4 months by as much as 20%. But were you somewhere half expecting the railway minister to once again raise freight rates and spare passenger fares, simply because, freight rates somewhere have been seen as the golden goose for the Indian Railways?
Frankly, no. I did not anticipate an increase in freight rates once again in such a short time. But having said that, I think from a longer term perspective, looking at the costs, or rather looking at the development efforts which the Railway Minister has laid down, which seem to be more longer term in nature than something in the immediate or the short run, I would expect the freight rates to again be raised upwards somewhere maybe in another 3 to 4 months from now.
Okay, Mr. Rao, appreciate you taking the time out and joining us to analyze the fine print of the railway budget this time around.